What's up, guys? It's Dave, it's Duncan, back from Metal Epidemic for another album review. And for this review, Duncan and I have been checking out the new album from San Diego punk quartet, Negative Blast. The band's new album, Echo Planet, will be released on February 10th via Quiet Panic Records. So, Duncan, this is the debut album from Negative Blast.
Debut.
Yep. The members' musical pedigree runs the gamut of 2000s hardcore stalwarts Lewd acts and Hour of the Wolf to innovative punk post-punk act Contact.
A lot of words.
With the recent addition of drummer Mario Rubalcaba throwing Hot Snakes, Earthless, Off and more into an already impressive list of bona fides. So, guys from lots of bands, basically, is what I'm saying here. The album was engineered and mixed by the band's own Alex Jacobelli at Sun6 Studios and then mastered by Brad Boatwright at Audio Sage.
It's all starting to make sense. We love you, Brad. It's all starting to make sense now, because this did feel like a bit of a rando choice.
Yeah, I have a weird filter on my email that just anything with Brad Boatwright comes in, it just goes automatically into this folder where it's like, now for review, basically.
Because it did feel like when I was listening, I was like, this one, like, I know Dave likes to eclectically mix up what we listen to these days, but even for Dave, this does feel off-piste.
Oh, does it?
Yeah.
But now,
all coming together. Oh, yeah.
So fairly new band, only one EP to their name so far. Don't know a hell of a lot about them, to be honest, but an impressive list of past bands have been linked to, and obviously anything that Brad Boatwright does, I am automatically interested.
You're missing a big point here.
Oh, what's that?
20 minutes long. Like, that is a call that I will answer any day of the week. Like, you tell me 20 minutes, I'm like that. Let's fucking do it. Like, so I'm literally like, we're going to be reviewing another album in this recording session, which is more than 3 times the length of this. So yeah, like you give me 20 minutes, I will give you the world, Dave.
Nice. Okay, so first album, and as I said, didn't really know much about it going into it, but kind of surprised me for a debut. This is hardcore punk, ladies and gentlemen. Proper hardcore punk that feels like authentic hardcore punk. You can tell straight away these guys are fans of the old school. You can hear like the influences coming through. That even like the kind of as far back as like 80s and 90s. Bands like Black Flag and Unsane. But they kind of merge it with something a little bit more current as well. I was picking up like little moments of like there's a band we checked out, I think it was last year, called Funeral Chic. A little bit of that in there, something a bit more kind of current. A couple other bands, but I'll mention them as I go through this review. So yeah, as I was listening to this, I was picking up similarities, but there was nothing here that felt like a replica in any kind of way. I didn't feel like they were copying another sound. There was definitely their own kind of personality going on with this album.
No Fear Factory tracks on this one, Dave.
No, there is not. What I kind of loved about their approach and their kind of delivery here is just the intensity. Really was what really kind of caught my attention on this album. The opener is called Boy Blues, and it's probably what you describe as a kind of warm up to the album. It's kind of more kind of mid-paced, and it kind of just sits just beneath that kind of boiling point, but kind of sets the scene at the same time. It's got a bit of a kind of volatile feel about it, like you feel like this could just explode, at any second. But they don't. They kind of wait until track 2, Trauma Bond, and that's what this track kind of gives you. This is like they move into a far more kind of fiery sound. The pace picks up, the vocals become even more unhinged. And you can feel like the kind of pressure start to kind of build up. There's this real kind of streak of hostility to that track. That like if this album was like a box of chocolates, say for example, Duncan. If this album was like a box of chocolates.
I'm not entirely sure who that's supposed to be.
This track felt like the dark chocolate to me. That felt like
I love a wee dark chocolate.
yeah. There was a bit of a kind of bitterness about that track. Even the little bits of the kind of melody and the lead work leaning towards something a bit kind of darker. And just like that it is over. Like as you said, like that is 2 minutes and 16 seconds. Like, and then we're on to the next track. And that track is very indicative of the album. Each track lasts between 2 and 3 minutes. They are short and sharp, to the point. There's no excess fat on any of these tracks. They just kind of get in and do the business. But they don't just give you like 8 tracks of the same thing. When you move into like the third track, Carbon Copy, this gives you a bit more kind of melody in the guitar work. It's a bit more upbeat. And the chorus has a bit of a bigger hook than the previous 2 tracks. It kind of made me think of a little bit of like the Bronx, but like if the Bronx were like Scandinavian, if that makes sense. That the kind of sound I was hearing in my head. But it also had like this kind of
Fjord Bronx.
It did. But I also had like some kind of experimental moments as well in the lead work, where it went in a kind of more like post-punk kind of vein as well. But you can really hear the more traditional sound coming through on this album as well. The real kind of punk roots. You hear it on the title track, where like the riffs are really scuzzy sounding, but they follow something a bit more conventional. Same with the No Trust. I was getting some like kind of old...
skipping over the cowbell, Dave?
I'll come with the cowbell.
You're stealing and ruining my routine, Duncan.
The cowbell appears on a couple of occasions, Duncan.
It does indeed, but on Echo Planet, I think it shines. Okay,
fair enough. No Trust had some kind of old, kind of like Descendants kind of vibes as well in the guitar work. But again, you could hear there was little similarities, but it never became an imitation. There's still enough individuality coming from Negative Blast to make it feel like its own thing. Track 7 though.
Oh man.
Track 7, man.
Shines.
The King in Vancouver is fucking awesome. That is my highlight of this album. It's probably the most melodic track on the release as well. Guitars are like a bit more buoyant. The vocal melodies are really catchy. They've pulled right back on the kind of bleaker kind of sound. And like when I was listening to this, I was thinking, this is more of what I expected from a band from California. Like this is like way more there's way more warmth than the other tracks on the album. But I kind of think it works so well because of the way they've placed that, and the rest of the album does sound so angry and pissed off, you know what I mean? It's the kind of little bit of light on the album, and it was a great like shift in tone to give you another side to the band. The album comes to a close with Egghead. This one gave me real like Frank Carter and the Rattlesnakes vibes. There's even in the vocals, there's a vocal similarity on that track. I was like, when it first kicked in, I was like,
almost sounds like he's from London.
Yes, I know.
So bizarre.
That's what I was thinking. Like that track especially, I was like, that sounds very like Frank Carter. I was like, is this a Frank Carter? Is he guessing on this or something? But it's not. But like, even though there is that, again, you get that little bit of kind of Frank Carter Gallows vibe. Again, it's got its own thing. It's a real like kind of just a good old like kind of foot stomper of a track. It's got a really cool grooving rhythm. The guitars are really kind of driven, and the vocals are just utterly like venomous. Like if you've heard Frank Carter, similar idea. The cowbell on this one was the one that caught my ear. Just like that little wee cowbell. I was like, oh yeah,
bring it in.
Here we go. Fucking love a cowbell.
Doesn't.
I know. And as a closing track, I think it did everything that it should, and that when it finished, I was like, I'm just going to play that album again. Like, let's just hit that one more time.
20 minutes, Dave.
I know, 20 minutes.
Damn you.
And then, like, every listen after that, it kind of became more and more infectious. And I started to pick up on, like, how cool the production was. Like, the production is like just a slap in the face just from the first second. It's harsh and it's gritty, but it feels well produced at the same time. Like it doesn't come across lo-fi or like muddy in any kind of way. It's well mixed and well balanced, but it's still got a really vicious tone to it, and I really love that about it. So like hats off to Alex from the band and the production. It sounds fantastic, and Brad, as always, like the mastering sounds killer. I really enjoyed this. I thought it was a really strong like debut album. I think these guys are ones to watch for sure. What about yourself? How'd you get on with it?
Let's play Metal Epidemic, Take Some Shots Bingo. A classic Duncan Lincoln up here. What's not to like about Negative Blast? Do it. Do a shot. I mean that. Like, I think you've hit a lot of the nails on the head. I also picked up, specifically from Echo Planet through No Trust, King of Vancouver, and Egghead, there's almost a kind of Caius meets a little bit of Queens of the Stone Age, earlier Queens of the Stone Age, on some of the guitar work. And if Josh Homme was more aggressive than the media portrays him to be against women, so
shots fired.
Allegedly, innocent until proven guilty. There's a bit of that in there as well. It's like the vocal stylings follow a similar pattern. The thing this has got is energy. It's got bundles of it, like from the start right through. Even when they shift gears, and even when they like bring into even the King of Vancouver, which is maybe the most sedate of all the tracks overall, it still constantly has energy and movement, and I think that's what is required from this. If you're gonna give me 20 minutes, you're gonna give me 8 songs in 20 minutes, you better not give me room for air. And this doesn't do that at any point. Part of that is in its killer production that you mentioned already. Vocals have like a real venom to them as well, but there's almost this kind of, he's like maybe got the microphone like just a wee bit too close to his mouth, kind of distortion. So it doesn't sound like an effect per se, but at the same time it does sound like no one sat there when he was doing, you know, testing 1, 2 and it was going into the fucking red. No one's got that. You take a step back from the microphone. Like they're just kind of happy to let it keep going. And I think that's like that. One of the big keys to how ferocious the sound and the energy comes from those vocals. It feels very live. It feels like a guy swinging a mic above his head, grabbing it, screaming it. I love that. I think we've talked about this most recently, actually. That if you're gonna come out and you're gonna do something kind of hardcore and punk and all the rest, I don't want to hear something that sounds like it was recorded in the studio. What I want to hear is something that sounds like it was recorded in front of my face. And Negative Blast have that, but they have a lot of tools in the arsenal here that are really, really interesting. And the song placement in particular is what, like, I love the fact that they don't shoot their load on the first track, but they tease it. They tease it and tease it, and when Trauma Bond kicks in, you get a lot of anarchy. Like, just like it kind of feels like this is the payoff to the longest edging session ever, even though it's only been 2 minutes, which to some people is the longest edging session that they can sit through. But like, it continually switches up, so it would be very easy just to do 20 minutes of like pure anarchy and not give a fuck about the movements of a release, but they haven't done that, and they choose the song placement well. There's no 2 songs that kick off with the same tempo. There's no 2 songs that utilize the same techniques or even necessarily the same song structures. They invert a lot of stuff and they play with it, and it's really, really cool. I think the production is killer on this. I think it's really, really, really well done. Brad doing what Brad does, which is just making everything sound like it's all meant to be. And I love that as well. That we mentioned the cowbell. Cowbell's great in there. Those moments where you get those kind of almost desert rock inflection stuff on the guitars are just peppered throughout. There's no one song that's like that. This is the Gaius song, and now this is a Descendants song, and you don't get that at all. They're elements, and they're cleverly placed, and it flows really, really well. 8 tracks, 20 minutes. You finish it, you want to play it again, and before you know it, you've played it about 4 or 5 times. Very, very easy listen. I will agree with you. I think it's more rewarding on subsequent listens, because then you start to pick out the nuances that you didn't get because you've been focusing on how there it is for the listening experience. When by the time you're on the 3rd listen in the band, or maybe there, you can start to pick out a lot more of what's going on, and a lot of that, once again, is due to really good production and really good mastering. So it's great. As these guys are definitely one to watch. It sounds like they're all like well into their careers as well, which is interesting, because this sounds like a hungry first album. This doesn't sound like we've had a couple of tries at this, and then we're just going to do our hardcore punk album. This kind of sounds like that. There's an urgency in this release that I would associate with a young band that were desperately trying to make their bones. So yeah, I really like this.
Nice. Okay, so ratings for this new album from Negative Blast. I think this is a great start for Negative Blast, and if this is their debut, then I imagine things are only going to get better over time. I don't think we've actually heard the best from this band. Even though this is their first album, you know, they've had a lot of previous band experience. I think it's a strong debut, but I'm excited to hear where they go next on the next one. Very solid. This is an easy 4 out of 5 for me. Like an enjoyable album that I'll definitely come back to throughout the year. What about yourself?
Twinsies 4. Ooh. Yeah, I thought this was great. Absolutely great. Gave me everything I wanted. Reminded me at times of, it's like that first time you listen to Hail Destroyer by Cancer Bats, and you're just like, who the fuck are these guys? Yeah. Why are they so like just there? And that's Negative Blast. Don't sound anything like Cancer Bats, but the energy, the vibe, and the attitude from that Hail Destroyer album is all the way through this. And we will be watching their guys' continued efforts and success from afar. But yeah, I expect big things. Everything's here. Everything's here. At this stage, everything's here. So you can only expect, with the dexterity they've shown in the songwriting, that things can only get better.
Yep, definitely. So, Negative Blast, Echo Planet, out on February 10th on Quiet Panic Records. Links below to all the shiz. Check it out. We'll be back with another review very soon. But until then, take care. Speak to you soon.
Bye, everyone.